As a founder, you're like, I want that for my company. In hunting, Sitka, I would say, really did it first and best with like really beautiful film. I think it really helped grow that business. As a founder, again, you see these things, they're beautiful, and you're like, man, I wish I could have that, but I don't have the money for it.
The barrier to entry is much lower. Therefore, there's a whole bunch more content being produced out there. And I'd argue that that content, most of it isn't actually that good. It looks good because production quality is easy right now.
Right.
But if you're going to tell a story, you have to give the audience a reason to care. And you do that by making them feel something. Welcome to the Backcountry Marketing Podcast. Today, I'm sitting down with Nic De Castro. He is the founder of LandTrust. Nic, welcome to the show.
Appreciate you having me on, Cole.
Good to see you. How is life?
Life is busy. I have young children, so I have 3 daughters under the age of 6. As you mentioned, I am a founder of a company, and so all of the busyness that goes along with this stage of life, I'm in the full swing of.
Today, we're going to be talking about busyness in a different regard. We're going to be talking about busyness when it comes to the world of content and building brand awareness, asking questions about storytelling and when is the right time to storytell, when is not the right time to storytell. And so, you're at a really interesting, I don't know if you picture it as an intersection or a junction or whatever it is, but you're rapidly building this business and you're asking these questions. How do we show up with content? So that's what we're going to be kind of breaking down today and just having a fun, maybe honest conversation about the realities of startup mode and content. And, as much as we'd like to just be able to like go out and make whatever we want, there's realities and there's, especially in the hunting space, there's a lot of complexity to how you show up in the world. So Nic, I'd love if you could kind of lay the foundation. Where are you at in growing the business? And then can you set the business case for content? And let's start there.
Sure. So just for people who are listening who aren't familiar with LandTrust, so LandTrust is a land sharing marketplace specifically for outdoor recreation. Said another way, a lot of people think about us like Airbnb or VRBO, but for booking hunting, fishing, camping, all sorts of fun outdoor activities on private land. We are do-it-yourself, so it's not guided stuff. It's just access to land to do the things that you're passionate about. I founded the company in Bozeman in 2019, so I'm coming up on 6 years of working on the business. Hunting is certainly kind of a tentpole activity vertical for us, although we are diversifying a lot right now into fishing and foraging and camping and lots of other fun stuff. So that's the business. As I mentioned, we're getting close to 6 years of kind of building the business. We're about 1.3, 1.4 million acres in 40-something states. We've done millions in bookings and have just been growing kind of steadily. And for more reference, my background before founding this company, I was in the advertising and marketing technology space for about a decade. So that was my whole career before this. So I worked with companies to help them understand YouTube when it was kind of new. And I personally sold Microsoft, GM, Adobe, their very first ever YouTube influencer campaigns in like 2011. They were all terrified to be there with these like YouTubers, so it sounds obvious now, but it was very scary then. We've grown the business through a few different ways. We did lean heavily on paid advertising for quite a while because I came from that industry and it's something that we knew, and then from a content perspective, it's one thing we've always felt very deficient in. And I know how important content is. We never really had like senior in-house marketing leadership ever. And it's just we always felt behind the 8 ball on content, even though we know it's very important. So we're actually, I was talking to you before you hopped on. We actually just launched our own podcast, and we've been doing that and basically turning what I like to say the exhaust of our product, which is new landowners and 5-star reviews that come through every day, and turning those into content, video podcasts, which we can clip and distribute and all that. So we're trying to find our way into it. So any investments we make in content or anything else are they're scrutinized, and there's got to be return on investment right away, So I know it's a long-winded answer, but I just wanted to set some of the foundation there.
Yeah. No, that backdrop is really helpful. Do you guys still do any paid advertising, or have you turned that off completely?
Yeah, no, we so 2 years ago, I met, actually probably around 2 years ago today, or in the last few weeks, I met who is now our chairman, um, Colin Gardner, and he was at Outdoorsy before, if you're familiar with Outdoorsy, RV sharing marketplace. So, he's a really strong marketplaces expert. But when I first met him, he's like, "Hey, look, I love what you're doing. Obviously, I'm working a kind of a parallel, people rent RVs to go outdoors, and so, they're kind of the demand to our supply, so to speak." He's like, "But, you got to stop paying for customers, and you got to really work on your contribution margin." And so that sent us down a path. We started building out and investing in our programmatic SEO. So for people who aren't familiar with it, especially for marketplaces, so this isn't like writing blog post articles. That's kind of more traditional SEO. Programmatic SEO is, we have, I don't know, close to 800 listings, and they all have a bunch of packages under their listing. So, you know, a farmer or ranch, they might offer hunting, fishing, camping, but on their hunting, they might have whitetail deer hunting, turkey hunting, and, et cetera. So you kind of have this merchandise. And so programmatic SEO is programmatically building web pages to match searches on Google or now ChatGPT, et cetera. So if someone searches for whitetail deer hunts in Washington, in Google, you're going to see like LandTrust ranked really high, and you're going to click on that link, whitetail deer hunts in Washington, it matches exactly what you search for, and you land there, and it looks like LandTrust homepage, only it's whitetail deer hunts in Washington. And so we have, I don't know, 5 or 7,000 of these pages that have been generated, um, and it's really helped us. So we were spending a lot on advertising, but we stopped completely last October. So we were like cold turkey, zero advertising. And our SEO efforts, they take time. It's not an overnight thing, but they have completely carried the business now. And now we're
Wow.
seeing interesting things happening with ChatGPT, Google's AI overlays, et cetera. So yeah, no more advertising.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I'm curious, were all those, do you build those manually, all those pages, or is there a way to do that fairly quickly?
So programmatic SEO means they're programmatically built. So no, you go build a framework.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, there is development that happens. But once you have that framework built, every time, like, let's just say, I don't think we have a listing in Rhode Island. I don't think we have any listings there. But if we had a new property come on and list in Rhode Island and they offered whitetail deer hunting and bass fishing, our system will automatically see that, hey, there's a new listing. It's in this new place, and it's going to build new Rhode Island pages for whitetail deer hunting and bass fishing. So it all happens programmatically now.
Hmm. Is this what drives most of your awareness today?
Absolutely. This and podcasts, frankly. So I've
Okay.
been a big part of our strategy was me going and being guest on other podcasts, both on our supply and demand. So if you think about, we're a two-sided marketplace. Our hosts are landowners, predominantly they're farmers and ranchers, multi-generation farm and ranch families. So I've been, a guest over the years on dozens and dozens of kind of like ag-focused podcasts. And then same thing, being a guest on podcasts and more of the hunt fish side of things too, predominantly hunt. So podcasts have performed extremely well. Now, not podcast advertising, being a guest on podcasts, long
How do
form
you,
conversations.
yeah, how do you track those?
So in our sign up flow, we'll ask people, "Hey, how'd you hear about us?" And one of those selections is podcasts, and so we see a lot of people will select that. So we do see it as a big referral. So our biggest referrals are word of mouth, like friends and family, and then podcasts.
Gotcha. So if you've got programmatic SEO working strong for you and
hmm
you've got podcast hosting and guesting working well, why the need for content? Why do you feel like you need, because that's a headache. It
Well,
can
I
be a
mean,
headache.
I would say that's all. It's all content. Some of it's programmatically generated.
Sure.
So maybe not the sexy content that the business that you're in, so to speak, but
I'll specify video or photo content.
video. Yeah. So video or photo content. Yeah. Um, well, I think there's something to be said for brand building. And now brand building can be this fuzzy, amorphous thing that you could dump so much money into, and maybe never see returns, so to speak. And I was always a performance marketing guy, so we'd kind of chuckle at brand guys, because like you just want to spend money and like make beautiful, sexy film. I get it, we all like it, but no, I still think that it's really important to be able to establish a brand identity, and I don't know, we still probably don't have that, frankly, and we're almost 6 years into this business. So There is a need, and we've invested a little bit into it over the last couple years, and we had, someone who kinda helped us, and we did produce some, like, pretty nice quality video content that has done well. And it's something you're proud to show. Um, so I do think that as a founder who's trying to scale a business and try to make their brand more known, certainly high quality video that establishes brand in who you are is important.
Yeah. So this begs the question, how do you define land trust? Like if the brand that you want is sometimes different than the brand that's interpreted.
Sure.
How would you describe what you want the brand to be in 10 or 20 years from now?
Well, I'm a sales guy, not a marketer, so it's a little bit harder for me to answer. Maybe it's said this way. I often say I'm very blessed that we get to work in a business that is in the business of creating lifelong memories and helping preserve multi-generation legacies. And so, those are two things. I don't know if you're familiar with the jobs to be done framework. Um,
No, what's that?
so, okay, so marketers often think in personas, right? So, hey, these are the personas that we, sell to and market to. Salespeople have the same kind of idea. So I came from that world. Well, Jobs to be Done was actually introduced by Clay Christensen, who wrote Innovator's Dilemma and some other like pretty kind of big books. But here's the general framework. It says instead of personas where you're like, hey, I'm looking to target a mid 30s, married guy who's got two kids and household income of X, right? The easiest way to explain it is let's take a subway car in New York City at rush hour. I used to live in New York City, so just like the entire slice of humanity is in there, from the homeless dude to the 100 millionaire, every shape, size, color, household income in between, right?
Hmm.
So, in a persona mindset, how could you target that train? Well, you couldn't. You'd have to have so many different personas. Jobs to be done says actually every single person on that train car has the exact same job to be done at that time, which is I need to pass the next 10 minutes until I get to where I'm going. And they hire different solutions. Some guys might hire sleeping, reading a book, looking at TikTok, Audible book, looking at the cute girl across from you, whatever, right? And so they all have the exact same job to be done at that moment, and they hire different solutions for it. And the cool thing about once you understand kind of that jobs to be done framework is that job is very durable, right? Like as long as people are riding train cars, that job exists. Now, the solutions that get hired, when TikTok launched, that was a new thing that got hired to pass time, or Audible books, whatever, right? And so for us, our jobs to be done on our guest side is I want to, one is called like the hunting vacation, or you can replace hunting with other activities, but it's I want to go to a new place with a group of my friends or family to to have new experiences and create lasting memories around hunting or fishing or whatever it might be, right? So that job is very durable. I would argue that job's existed for a long time, since maybe the beginning of time, and will exist for a long time. Now, the solutions that you build to get hired for that job, like right now, LandTrust is, we've built a solution for that, right? But it might change. So you're not marrying yourself to your product or solution currently. You're marrying yourself to the job and just finding solutions for that as we continue to grow. Um, so yeah, it's just I don't know. It's kind of how we look at it.
Yeah, why do you look at it that way? What's the benefit of looking at it in this jobs to be done framework rather than a more conventional persona or audience
Yeah,
framework?
because and it's not to say that personas have no place. We don't use personas at all. Because I think jobs are a little bit more macro. I don't really care what you look like, how much money you have, anything like that. Demographics, I don't really care. Because if you love this activity, whether it's hunting or fishing or whatever it might be, and you want to go on trips, which we all do, and you want to go with friends or family, which most of the time we all do. I don't know. Like, I don't really need to know the other stuff about you. It's kind of like the difference between contextual targeting and advertising versus like data targeting. So let me be clear about that. So if you're Rolex and I come to you and say, I'm the golf channel, do you want to advertise against golf content? Your answer is yes. Do you need to know the demographics? Do you need to know the psychographics? No, you're just like someone watching the golf channel. I'm Rolex. I want to advertise to them. You kind of don't need to get into all the minutia.
Yeah.
So that's the power of kind of like using the content there. And for me, jobs to be done is kind of the same thing, right? I don't really care about all the minutia if you if you have this job to be done, so to speak.
Sure. You guys launched this podcast,
Yep.
which I do want to talk a little bit about, but I'm
Sure.
curious. So, one of the ways that personas and beyond personas, but like true insights about your audience,
Sure.
one of the ways they can be helpful is by informing the type of content that you produce, by understanding what are people watching, what are they not watching, what's the white space, what are they emotionally interested in, what are they
Yeah.
technically interested in,
Yeah.
how much information, if any, do you have about these jobs to be done, but the more soft
Mm.
tangibles about these individuals that maybe could help inform your content?
Totally. So in order to get to that statement, that one, and by the way, we identified multiple jobs on the guest side, and we have a job on the landowner side too. So we identified like 5 originally. We choose to serve 2 of them. We explicitly don't serve a few of them. And it's just
What are they?
yeah, so there was one is called like the hunting vacation, but again, you can swap out hunting with other activities. One is the local spot, which is why I started the company originally. Right, I was living in Bozeman. I'm like, man, there's a bunch of public land, which is awesome, but there's also amazing private ground around, and I'd love to have access to that for Saturday. And so I want to find something that's within 2 hours of my house that I can easily access and have to myself to enjoy myself, right? For short periods of time. But then there was one, if you look at hunting, there's kind of like the trophy job to be done, which is, and I don't say trophy as a pejorative. I don't think it's a negative connotation in my perspective, but it's like, hey, I put in for 12 years for this tag and this trophy unit. None of my buddies drew the tag, obviously, and I drew it. And like, I really want to kill an animal. I want to harvest that big mule deer buck or big bull or whatever it is. And I'm kind of not going to be happy unless I do. Um, that's a job that we choose not to service. Not to say that like you couldn't do it on land trust. We absolutely have some properties in those types of units where you could do it. But it's really about like if that's the job you have, hire an outfitter, hire a guide. Like that is right up their alley. We're more about the experience and like people are very successful on land trust, but it's not the end goal, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's an example of them. Um, Now, when you're building these jobs, there's a very specific framework you go through to actually get there. So for me to be able to say that hunting vacation job, that took a lot of work to be able to get to one sentence, right?
Sure.
So there's social, emotional, and kind of like there's a whole progress. It's really like he describes it as like building a documentary. Like you're a documentary filmmaker. You meet this customer, and you're like, man, take me back to the first time you even thought about something like this, right? And you like basically deconstruct all of it, and you look through all the steps, and you're like, I can tell you all the steps that someone who has that hunting vacation or fishing vacation job to be done from like daydreaming, because that's how it all starts, right? Like I just was talking to an investor of mine. He's like, man, I just got back from Marathon Island and we were, fishing for tarpon. I'm like, oh, daydreaming, right? Like that would be super cool to, okay, maybe actually planning and browsing and getting inspiration to, talking to a couple buddies that you're like, oh, this would be a fun trip to do together, to actually looking at maybe some actual options, some properties like, hey, I want to go do this, turkey hunt in Kentucky. Here's a few properties to start to making it real, all the way to going on the trip and post trip. So we really understand that process. And so then from a content perspective, when I'm doing interviews on our new podcast, which is brand new, little baby, we've released 3 episodes. We have like 15 in the can. But when I'm talking to people who've gone and had 5-star experiences on land trust, I'm trying to kind of walk through, hey, when did it first kind of dawn on you? How did you hear about land trust? Basically walk through all those steps that we know that happen.
Mm.
So that's how it informs us. And are we doing it perfectly? No.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, let's talk more about the podcast. As you said, you were trying to find a way to turn the exhaust of your business into content, and what a better way to do that than start a podcast and talk to people.
Yeah.
Give me like the worst case and the best case scenario that this podcast could have on the business for land trust. Like, what's the goal? Are you after awareness? Are you after relationship building with, private landowners who partner with you? What's your main objective?
So we backed our way into a podcast.
Okay.
It wasn't like, let's have a podcast to create a media business, which a lot of podcasts do, right? A lot of podcasts say like, man, if I could really do, a couple guys launch podcasts and like, man, it wouldn't it be cool if we could quit our jobs and, just do the podcast.
I think every group of friends considers that at one point in time.
Yeah, totally, totally. So I just want to be clear, like that's not how we got to a podcast. Like we're running a two-sided marketplace. We've raised investor capital. It's not about that. That'd be cool if it gets to a size we can sell sponsorships. Like great, but it's not how we got here. How we got here is content. We had none of it, and we're like, man, we have nothing to feed the platforms. And as you know, like the social platforms are hungry beasts who need to be fed content all the time. Vertical video historically, or more recent history has been like, you got to feed it vertical video, and like all the time. Like we don't do TikTok because we just don't have. Maybe now with the podcast we could feed the beast, but 0% chance we could feed the TikTok beast before because we just didn't have the vertical video at the volume that you needed to actually go and feed it. So we came to the podcast through almost like reverse engineering it, which is like, I need two things. I need more awareness, but I also need more conversion at the bottom of the funnel. So it's not like buying a pair of black tennis shoes. It's a bigger average order value. Average order value is around $1,000. For everyone listening, you can book $20 a day fishing. I'm just saying like average order value. So it's a little bit bigger purchase. You're taking days out of your time. Often there's travel involved. So it's like planning a vacation, right? It is a vacation, essentially. It's a hunting vacation or a fishing vacation. So there's more consideration there. And we're new. This is a newer model, right? And there's a lot of people that get there and like find properties that they're really interested in, and maybe they just don't convert for whatever reason. So we started with like, hey, how could we increase conversion? And like, I don't think there's any better way than through video, other than like actually meeting in person, right? So like, if you can't meet that landowner in person, which you can't, like, how about video of people talking about experiences on it, or the landowner themselves, like talking, to me and like telling people about their place and what they want to offer and all that stuff. So that's kind of how we started shooting some of that video and basically going through all the podcast mechanics, but without making a podcast, like scheduling and what we're going to talk about and like what we're doing right now, basically, right? And we were recording that video and like pushing it out to social. But then we're sitting and thinking to ourselves, like, we're already doing all the hard work of a podcast effectively. Why not just turn it into a podcast? And that way we can drive more awareness too and kind of syndicate it like that. And so that's how we ended up here. It wasn't like, we want to have a LandTrust podcast because that would be fun and maybe we can make a media business.
Yeah. As you think about your audiences or your jobs to be done audiences, where does a podcast fit into their media mix and what they're consuming out there?
So we have two sides to our marketplace. We have our hosts and our guests, so landowners and then sportsmen. It's interesting. A lot of people wouldn't think that like the farming and ranching community, which not all of our landowners, but a lot of our landowners are farmers and ranchers. They consume a lot of podcasts, and then maybe it's a certain segment of them, and because we're the landowner community from the farm and ranch sector who use LandTrust, especially a couple years ago when we were really new, were like very progressive. Not like politically speaking, but they're trying new things. They're innovators. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
And so it's self-selecting almost that they're going to be the ones listening to a bunch of podcasts and trying to learn and like what's the new, regenerative ag practices and how are people doing X, Y, and Z, right? So they're innovators. So that was really, really effective for us. We're preaching to the choir there, right? We always say like, if we hear a landowner, a farmer, or rancher say, "Well, that's not how Granddad did it," like they're not our landowner. They will be in 10 years because they're laggards. But right now, like we're wasting our time trying to talk to them. We're not going to convince them of anything. In 10 years, they'll come around.
Yeah.
So I do think we went and found them where they were from a podcast. Me being guests on podcasts. And then same thing on, as like hunters, fishermen, climbers, bikers, like we're all hardcore enthusiasts and we're trying to consume that content. So injecting ourselves into other people's podcasts to like spread what no one's heard of this. What is this? What, in long form conversation has been incredibly effective.
Have you looked at what I keep using the word audiences. I know that's not how you.
No, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, it's an audience. Yeah.
All right. Have you looked at what your audiences, what type of podcast they are consuming, looked at that landscape, and then try to figure out, okay, how do we produce a show that's unique or different from all of the other hunting and fishing shows out there?
Certainly.
I don't know the number of them, but there's a lot.
Oh my God, so many. Yeah. So again, we have one podcast called the LandTrust podcast. And so that was even a strategic decision because we have two audiences, right? We have a host side and a guest side.
Mm-hmm.
And the guest side There's hunters, there's fishermen, there's foragers, there's campers. Like so we can serve a lot of verticals there. So it's been kind of hard from a brand perspective. We've gone back and forth where we had separate Instagrams and oh, I don't know. I mean, I don't know that
Yeah.
there's a right answer. Let's just take hunting because it's the biggest activity. We are not generating a hunting podcast. Like I am not an expert hunter. I don't even get to hunt that much, right? So like I don't have like any novel expert advice for you. There's 1,000 podcasts that you can listen to. Um, we want to talk to people about successful outdoor experiences, and success not meaning necessarily people killed stuff, but like we call it 5-star stories. LandTrust is about experiences and not outcomes. So some of the best hunting trips I've ever been on, we didn't kill or even see animals, but it's the people you're with, it's the setting, it's the disconnection from technology and the day to day and all that stuff, right? So 5-star, that's a 5-star experience. We see reviews all the time. They come in every day like, hey, we didn't get anything, but it was a 5-star, and the 3 paragraphs of like how cool it was to meet the family and see the land, all that stuff. So it's really not a hunting podcast. It's just a cool, like outdoor experiences podcast. So we're not like, this is how I killed a 200-inch buck. There's so many podcasts about that, and I've never killed a 200-inch buck. I can't even tell you how to do it. And then on the landowner side, it's really about, this community, especially the farm and ranch community, is a very insular community. They've been burned by a lot of people. They've been sold a lot of snake oil. And you have to realize you're talking about their family's legacy, right? Like, I think our oldest landowning family is 6 generations deep. And so, what we're trying to convince them as their partners to do is to let people into that legacy. And that's a big, big deal. Trust is in our name because this business doesn't work without trust, like old-fashioned trust. And so for us, there could be nothing better to talk to those people than people like themselves coming on and talking about it, right? That's the ultimate. I'm a sales guy, but I'm not going to be as effective ever as just like them seeing and hearing somebody that is just like them talking about, their experience so far. Good, bad, and ugly, right?
So it sounds like what you're saying is the show was about the connection between land and experience and the history and legacy and the emotions that gets wrapped up in all of that.
Totally. Yeah, totally. And just like, again, as a guest, you're hearing other guests and the really cool, high quality outdoor experiences they're having. And as a landowner, you're hearing about how LandTrust has been for them to participate with as a partner, but also the effect and changes and improvements it's had impacted on them and their families.
How are you going to measure success of the show?
Yeah, so it does take a little bit of investment. I think the investment has come way down. We've thought about a podcast for years, frankly. There's like, coordination and scripting and all this stuff. Now with AI, like we stood it up in 2 weeks. And we're using Riverside right now. You use Riverside, we use Riverside, like the AI tools for editing, like it's taken so much of the work out, frankly.
Yeah.
But so yeah, there's some investment that we put into it, not a ton. And so we look at, hey, if we can, we had to boil it down, as you know, in marketing, like it would be really cool if everything was super attributable, right? Like they saw this thing on a billboard and they came and bought the gear. You can't really do that. So we just said, hey, let's take a high level metric like listens or views across the different platforms, and let's just aim for a goal. We just launched. If we can get to 500 listens or views across all the platforms per week, we can we did some math and said, okay, we think it'll probably have this down funnel effect on us. So that's where we're at right now.
How did you, what's the down funnel effect? How do you calculate that?
Well, eventually it should lead to conversions, meaning bookings, right?
Yeah.
And we're literally in the middle of this right now. We didn't even start promoting the podcast till I think yesterday or today we sent an email. I think it was this morning.
I'm asking you a lot of questions for a brand new podcast.
No. And it's great. Like, this is what, these are the conversations I like to have with my friends who are running businesses. Like, hey, how are you measuring this stuff? So if we backed out math and if we can drive another 40 bookings a month or so from people who kind of like engage with, listen to a podcast, that's great. Whether they're already down the funnel, they didn't discover the podcast, but it was on, a clip of the podcast was on the listing and they saw that counts, right? So down funnel kind of conversion, or they discovered it through someone sending, or it being recommended on YouTube or coming up in your shorts, or in Spotify has their little shorts thing now. Yeah. So yeah.
So here's a theory I have, and I'm curious to get your thoughts on this. AI obviously is everywhere,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of people talking about, oh, well, AI could just go out and write blog posts, infinite
Yeah.
blog posts,
Yep.
and what a way to theoretically earn SEO. Um, but what if I think that could happen in the podcast space?
Oh, for sure.
You look at all of the AI voice
Yep.
generators, and if you fed an AI machine all the content around your business and around your industry, you could theoretically create a very compelling, a very interesting host that people might want to listen to. So my
Totally.
question is, for currently all the human-led podcasts out there, how do you differentiate? How do you make sure that your show is valuable enough that it rises above, the 80% of theoretical, I don't know, AI podcasts out there?
Yeah. So I've actually, in my personal life, been looking at this recently. Have you messed around with Notebook LM much?
That's what I was thinking of when I was, yeah,
Dude, like,
it's
so
crazy.
yeah, if your listeners haven't, like, I don't know, the bottlenecks of knowledge acquisition now are just gone, you know? Um, and I'll explain kind of what I'm talking about. But I actually listened to a podcast that I know is AI generated, and it's like the AI Daily Dose. And so, like, it's literally a podcast
Hmm.
about AI and the progress. I'm pretty sure it's a Daily Dose of AI or something like that. Um, and the guy will tell you. So there is an actual dude, and he will do the podcast, but then he'll tell you when his AI voice is going to take over.
Hmm.
So he's like, still tells you, and it sounds exactly like him. I mean, I don't know if you play with Riverside. Riverside will do your voice for reads. Like,
I have heard, I've not tried that feature.
it's pretty weird. It's pretty weird to listen to yourself say stuff you never said. Um, I think there's a place, and it's funny. I have a group of buddies, and we're kind of like we have group chat, and we talk about different like theological doctrine, and like there's esoteric concepts and stuff. And um, one of them was recommending a book. It was written like the 70s or 80s by some theologian. I'm like, well, now I gotta like buy a book. I don't even read physical books. I'm always doing stuff, so I just listen to stuff. I'm like, there's no way I'm gonna do that. But then I'm like, huh, I've been wanting to mess with Notebook LM. So I found like a PDF transcript of the book, unscribed, like downloaded it, uploaded it in Notebook LM, and then was able to like chat with it, and then like creating a podcast instantly. Like, holy crap. So I literally have thought about this in my personal life. Like, I could just create episodes of like all the conversations that we're having and the sources and doctrines that we're talking about. I'm creating the podcast and I'm disseminating it to my buddies through a group chat, but I could just put it on Spotify. Like, why not? And then I could just share the spot. They could just follow it instead of me like downloading it and like uploading it there. So it's honestly an interesting question that I don't know the answer to yet. Like, am I spinning my wheels by doing this personally, or could I just do this with AI? I don't know. Now, I will say I don't think I could get our guests to participate in that. So I think you
Sure.
can do topics where like
You could talk
the,
about a 200-inch buck without actually having personal knowledge of how to do it.
yes, or another for my exact so like I just I recorded a podcast earlier before hopping on this. It was with one of our guests. He was like probably 70, probably around my dad's age. Um had a great time, talked about his experience. But I could have just fed his review into like a Notebook LM type thing and just generated a podcast about it. Is that the most engaging format for that? Probably not. It's probably better to hear and see someone again, it's kind of like the guests seeing themselves in that person, right? Like my dad seeing like another guy in his cohort using this technology to go have great experiences. So, I think it depends on the format and excuse me, who your audience is. But I certainly think, and I might even be launching another personal podcast just to like upload these Notebook LM podcasts that I'm doing, you know?
Well, but that's where I think it all has to come back to trust and to brand.
Yes.
Um, and that's not necessary for every industry or every
No.
job to be done.
Nope.
But especially in your position where trust is the name of the game,
Yeah.
you can't. I don't know. It doesn't seem like you can replicate that at this point.
No, I don't think our audience is. I think our sportsman audience might be a bit more receptive to it. I don't think our landowner audience would love that
Yeah.
yet. And again, in 2 years, the pace that this is accelerating at, maybe it will be. But I still think now that personal, es- especially as the founder, me doing the interviews and like having that connection, I think is still very important in trust building.
What? Yeah. It's an interesting theory. Hunting is a notoriously difficult market to be in.
Yes.
Your hands are tied in many ways. What other ways besides the podcast are you trying to build your own organic channels, your own organic audiences, and getting around the pay to play walls
Yeah.
that are even tighter for the hunting world?
Yeah, two things. So on that point, yes, for people who aren't familiar or don't work in this industry, and again, I came out of the advertising industry. Hunting specifically is a very difficult hunting and Second Amendment stuff. So any firearm related things are like firearms are probably the most hard, and you can't really advertise anywhere online, like paid digital. Hunting, at least for a while there, it's starting to loosen a little bit, but like really difficult to try to run paid advertising campaigns. Like if there's a dead animal or like a weapon or a broadhead or anything, like just like flagged constantly, and so it's just really difficult to kind of advertise. Um, the way we're looking at it is we're looking to partners and channels, right? So we've over the years done partnerships, and most of them, frankly, they were more marketing centric partnerships that just didn't really produce. And I don't lay that at the feet of the partners. It's really on us because it takes effort to make a partnership work, right? Like if it's a marketing level partnership, um, you've got to be proactive. You've got to plan. You've got to like really put effort into it. Getting a partnership signed is really kind of easy, and that's the beginning. It's not the end.
What
It's
what
like
what sort of partnerships are you talking about?
so. I would say like with a brand or
Okay.
with a larger influencer, right? Not just we've had like really large influencer partnerships, and it just didn't produce what we would have wanted it to. And again, it's not because of them, it's because of us. We were not proactive. We didn't plan well enough. Everything that person we asked them for, they gave to us right away. But we just didn't ask them for things. We didn't plan it out. We didn't coordinate it. We didn't There's a lot of stuff we didn't do. And so it just kind of fell flat. Um, Now we're looking more towards like product level, like integrations. And so something that is like scalable from that perspective, because if you think about it, we're a technology company. And so can we integrate into mapping apps where it's like, cool. Now you still have to do marketing around that type of thing too, but it's also happening at a product level, like it's integrated. And so you start to see us and discover us through these other channel partners who are now distributing LandTrust through their apps, right? So we're looking more towards that.
I see.
hmm
I mean, yeah, that seems like a really, I say, convenient way to build that awareness pretty quickly.
Yeah. So one that I just did a podcast with their chief marketing officer. Are you familiar with a company called On Water?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Alex, I just did one yesterday. We'll release it in a couple weeks. But yeah, so LandTrust, you'll now see every LandTrust property that has fishing available in OnWater's mapping apps.
Hmm.
And we're going to be announcing another one with more hunt centric mapping apps in the next couple weeks as well. So those are kind of like those product level integrations that we're using to reach our customer who just hasn't found out about us yet.
Yeah. When we first connected, you were talking about this question of, gosh, in the hunt space, there's so many brands that get out there and produce awesome films
Yeah.
and tell cool stories.
Yep.
And one of your questions was, when do we do that? Is there a time that we do that, or do we just completely bypass that as a creative product that we could create? Let's talk more about that specifically. What are your thoughts around branded content, like high quality storytelling?
I mean, the answer is you always want it. Like you see those and you're like, gosh, I wish, as a founder, you're like, I want that for my company. Right. So I think in hunting, Sitka, I would say really did it first and best with like really beautiful film, like really well written, really well produced, shot, all that stuff. Like at least in my opinion. Um, and I think it really helped grow that business. But it's not cheap to do. But they were already a kind of a bigger brand. I don't remember exactly when they started releasing their first films, but it's been a while now. It's probably a decade ago. But I think they were first in the hunt space to really go after that, and then they really set the tone. And I know like out of Bozeman, CCAT Creative, and some of these guys like those guys were early in that space, and then Yeti started to get into it, and obviously Yeti took that model and ran with it. Um, so as a founder, again, you see these things, they're beautiful, and you're like, man, I wish I could have that, but I don't have the money for it. And um, I think over the years, it's probably, I'd be curious to ask your perspective on it because I don't have the answer. Like, I think some of that stuff has become more attainable from a cost perspective, maybe than it had a decade ago. Um, and we're still looking at that. I think there's different levels of content, right? Like that's like the brand, the hero content, right? Like aspirational, beautiful. I don't know. It also makes you look very buttoned up as a company. Like, they're not just fly by night Joe blows or whatever, right? Like, no, I mean, that's like a very professional, I don't know, any better way to say it. So it's like, yeah, at what stage is that investment worth it? Could you see the return on investment? And again, not in 5 years, because as a startup, you don't know that 5 years is not guaranteed. So there's a bunch of questions I don't have the answer to, frankly.
Yeah. I don't know that, to be honest, I don't know that anyone does.
Yeah.
I think anyone who is producing that type of branded content, I don't know that people have the answers. I think we have some answers that we like to try and throw around, and you can certainly make the case like, oh, great storytelling is great marketing.
Yes.
100%. But yeah, in terms of actually analyzing ROI and all of that, it gets really tricky. To your point about cost, I think the cost is, I mean, it's definitely come down. I think that what I'm seeing, and this actually kind of fits with the whole AI podcast idea, like the barrier to entry is much lower. Therefore, there's a whole bunch more content being produced out there. And I'd argue that that content, most of it isn't actually that good.
Yeah.
It looks good because production is cheap and production quality is easy right now.
Right.
But what's actually difficult is if you're going to tell a story, like as an audience, like, you have to make me feel something.
Yes.
I need to be emotionally invested. And that's the biggest differentiator, I think, between content that works and content that works really well. Because I have this theory that like audiences just don't care. They do not care what a brand puts out unless if they're like that 1% loyal, tattoo
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
logo
Yeah.
on the arm. Like people don't care. And so in a world where you are just inundated with ads and branded content,
Yep.
and you're competing with Netflix, and you're competing with Spotify, and you're competing with Notebook LLM apparently now.
Yeah.
Like you have to give the audience a reason to care, and you do that by making them feel something. And I think that's the biggest opportunity I see is like there's so many brands producing content, but it's not strategic, and it's not like as emotionally compelling as it could be. And I feel like if you're not going to aim for those two things, then why even do it?
I totally agree. I think.
Sorry, I was on a soapbox there.
No. And that's so the frustrating part to me is like, we literally, like, my business facilitates lifelong memories. So, I mean, the amount of first hunts, last hunts. I had a landowner on talking about how he's hosted a couple last hunts with the dad who ended up passing away. Like, first hunts with kids, first hunts with new hunters, like just like lifelong memories that these people talk about for the rest of their life. Like, so that's what I deal in. That's my business. So it's like the most fertile ground for like rich emotional storytelling. And then you go to the other side, which is 4, 5, 6, 7 generation landowners who are still trying to keep that legacy going and like the history. All like we have very fertile ground for like high quality emotion evoking content.
Yeah.
And we've only been able to produce a tiny bit of what could be captured there. So, that's why I'm like uniquely frustrated. If I had like a sushi delivery app, like I don't know, dude, like let's just run performance marketing and see if we can get the app downloads. So I wouldn't be like, man, I wish we could do some, really high quality, brand film or something like that.
Well, but I think there's a way, and you're already doing it. There's a way to tap into that emotion and present it in a medium that isn't as expensive.
Yeah. that's how we ended up here because, it comes
Yeah.
down to dollars, right? So it would be sweet to have 50K to throw at like a hero, brand anthem film, where it's just that beautiful thing. Um, but we found ourselves where we are today just out of like, hey, out of necessity. Like we don't have that. And so how can we produce content that does try to capture some of these emotional moments? But yeah, it's not, I'm sitting here at the same place I record our podcast. Like it's not highly produced or anything like that, which I think there's a total place for that too. And I think a majority of your content probably should be that. And then you have the
Yeah.
cherry on top, like the hero, beautiful brand film.
I was looking at your Instagram earlier, and obviously you guys are active there and you've got a lot of photos, but have you ever considered doing like pairing your podcast episodes with like a photo journal or a photo essay? I'm imagining you've got these like 6 or 7 generation farmers, and I just can picture what they
Yeah,
could look like. And it'd have to be the right medium where people would want to like actually take the time to
totally.
appreciate the photo and the story behind it. But that could be a lower lift way to really capture the heart and soul behind some of the stories you're finding.
I mean, yeah, that would be, we haven't thought about that really. That would be an amazing, and the couple pieces of like higher quality content that we have produced around our landowners they're on our YouTube, and they were some of our landowners in and around Bozeman because that's where I was based. We did get some like incredible photography out of those too, and like the stories are amazing. So yeah, that could be a great format. Like, what would that look like? I don't know yet, but certainly there are so many amazing stories to be told on that side of our market.
Or what if you even switch the perspective? What if instead of having it be a photo essay about a farmer, maybe it was the grandson or the granddaughter writing about their grandfather, or it was about the daughter reflecting on the hunt that her dad took her on.
Yeah,
Like that perspective
that'd be
shift,
amazing. Yeah,
that could be
so
neat.
again, like I find myself being like, yes, I want that. Like, how can I pay for it? But yeah,
Well,
I'm not a
eh,
creative, so I don't think about things like this. Yeah.
but you're also at a tricky spot where like you need the awareness and you need the audience at the same
Yes.
time for this to be
Yes.
accepted.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you could just if you could like wave a magic wand and produce any type of content, serial content, branded films, um, but you could tie that to a result, what would you want to be able to produce? Would it be this type of work, or is it something else that you'd love to try and experiment with?
I think it's definitely video. Yeah, I would say just rich storytelling video that follows on, again, we have two sides of our marketplace. So one would be landowners and legacy and that storytelling of the land and the family and all that stuff. And then obviously integrate land trust into it, of course. And then on our guest side, it's capturing these extremely meaningful lifelong memories and moments um, across activities in different groups and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, just lifelong memories and legacies. Really, that's the business. And so, how can we capture that in the most kind of beautiful and emotion evoking way, where it's like we really starting to cement that as land trust. Of course, there's always like the tactical. What is land trust? Land trust is a two-sided marketplace where you can book outdoor experiences, right? That's not very emotion evoking. The output of that is right.
Yeah. Uh, your background, as you mentioned, was previously in a lot of YouTube influencer campaigns,
Hmm.
ad campaigns. Is that a route that you've explored? You're certainly well knowledgeable about it.
Yeah, I am. I had a guest on my podcast. Have you ever seen the Okayest Hunter brand, where they just like celebrate like very average? It's like the
No,
opposite of a 200-inch buck. It's
but
like
that sounds like me.
yeah, no, me too, right? So like, check him out, Okayest Hunter on Instagram. They're hilarious, and it's just like he's a normal dude. He's like, I don't know, you celebrate shooting like the spike buck, whatever. So he's done a really good job. But we had this conversation on our podcast of like, I don't know if I believe in influencers anymore. Is it like totally saturated? Um, in any new medium, in any new channel, all the profit, so to speak, is like at the very beginning, right? Like when TikTok launched and they launched their like everyone that like hopped in first, like sucked all of the profit out because it was like the new thing. And when I say profit, I just mean like performance. And then it just like commoditizes down to this like sea of, I don't know, everyone's doing it. So like, is there still a business to be done there? Sure. But, you know, I don't know if influencers are still extremely performant from driving like actual engagement. That was a conversation I had with him because he also in his day job works at Gunpowder, which is a PR kind of shop, and he runs affiliate marketing. And
Is
so
this Ryan by chance?
so Ryan owns Gunpowder, but this is
Okay,
one of his employees, Eric Clark. Really cool
gotcha.
guy. You should, by the way, you should have him on. He's great. This is like right up his alley. But we kind of got in that conversation of like, you can't just like send your product to some influencer person and tell them to like post about it. Like that's not going to work unless it's just like lightning strike, right? It's got to be a fully coordinated, well thought out, like proactively, and you've got to like educate them on your products and services. And it's like training a sales team effectively.
Yeah.
And so just finding, an influencer who you think has people like, I just don't think that works anymore. There's just been so much of it. And we're like, it's like banner blindness, like I sell display ads. Display ads worked really well in the beginning of display ads because like, what is this thing blinking at me over here? They used to actually blink, and now you're just like everyone's banner blind. You're like whatever. So I don't know. We have dabbled a little bit, and we've never seen like whoa that really worked. But again,
Yeah.
we probably dropped the ball on our end, frankly.
Yeah. As we start to come to the end of our time today, I've started a new wrap out theme, and it's called "Ending on Failures."
Yeah.
What is a big failure you've had around, I don't know, a campaign or a strategy that you really thought was going to work and didn't work? And what have you learned about? What have you learned through that?
I mean, maybe so many failures. Holy shit. There's a couple of them. So we landed partnerships with a couple big influencers. Um, and we kind of were in that thought process like, man, they talk about us and we're gonna blow the doors off. Nope. Like you see maybe a little traffic spike, maybe see some account creates but no, like blips. And again, we didn't have a team like working that partnership and like coming up with the ideas and pushing it and being proactive and managing it and educating and all that stuff, right? And we're in a unique position because I don't have a product I can send you. It's not like I just spent a weekend or two ago. I was at camp with Josh from Montana Knife Company. Like those guys have absolutely crushed, right? They're everywhere with everybody doing everything. But I'm envious because like he can send you his knife and he can send a knife to be part of a giveaway or like it's this thing I can give to you. I don't have that thing. So that was, there's been failures around kind of that influencer, like big ones. Like one of them's 4 million, followers and really big. The other was on more of a performance campaign I can think back to where when we were still spending on paid ads, where we optimized for account creates and we blew the doors off of, our CPA for account creates, right? It was like awesome. But then that cohort just was shit. Like it didn't
Yeah.
convert. Like they didn't care. So, lo and behold, when you move your performance metric up the funnel, it optimizes for that. It's like, cool, we drove the most downloads in a month we ever drove, or not downloads, but like, account creates. We don't have an app like that. But you watch that cohort over the past few years, they suck. Like they just don't care, and it was like, at the time you like spiked the football, like, yeah, we crushed it. Most account creates ever and the cheapest we've ever gotten. It's like, yeah, you paid for a bunch of cheap shit. Whereas, podcasts, slow burn, and highly engaged users come to the platform. It's their best platform for acquiring new landowners. So yeah, it's not the sugar high of, putting some money in and driving like tons of activity, but it's also this longer burn.
Yeah. As we wrap up, what are some questions that you're asking yourself? What are you thinking about? And if you could kind of summarize our conversation today, maybe with some of those questions.
Um, I think we talked about this when we chatted last. There was an article written recently, a Substack by Andrew Chen. He's like Andreessen Horowitz VC, but it was titled like every marketing channel is shitty right now. And I mean, sitting in my chair, not to say we've tried it all and done it all. We're a tiny little team, but I mean, there was a lot that rang true. And it's like, where do you reach people now? Like, we have been throttled by Meta, and we finally called them. Like, we were at 17.9K followers for months. And we finally reached out and they're like, yeah, oh, you got to pay us to get more followers. They just said it. Like, they just said it out loud. It wasn't like,
Hmm.
here's your strategy. And like, no, you just have to pay. Like, okay, well, I mean, I guess I appreciate the forthrightness with this, but it was like, used to be you'd have your account strategist and they'd be like, oh, you should try this type of content and this type of campaign. Like, no, you're gonna have to pay.
Was that just because of the hunting connection,
No,
or
I don't think so. It
hmm,
was literally, and this was like 4 days ago. So this is fresh
hmm.
off and like, yeah, after 15,000 subs, you basically just have to pay. You got to spend some money to like drive, subscribers and followers and stuff. So I guess the question, that I find myself asking is like, great, we have programmatic SEO, and now like what we're seeing happen with the answer engines of ChatGPT and Perplexity, like that's translating very well into those, and we're starting to see more traffic and referrals and stuff coming from there. So like that's great. That's always kind of on. You can't tune it, right? It's not like let's do more SEO this month. It just is what it is. It just grows, kind of like an annuity. Podcast is a new thing we're testing to see if we can drive some awareness, but also conversion out of it. But it's like, what's the next channel? Where are people finding success in, without just shoving quarters in the machine? I don't know.
If we could answer that, then we'd be in a good spot.
Yeah. Yeah. And,
Hmm.
and, and I'm all, I mean, video is for sure it. Like, I've been in and around selling video for marketing and advertising purposes for now since like 2011. So I've been in for a while. Video, other than like flying out to meet the person, shaking their hands and having a conversation, video and long form conversation with video is the best.
Yeah. Well, Nick, I appreciate you taking the time to chat. Thanks for
Thanks for having me on,
opening
man.
up the hood of the engine and diving us in, giving us a look
Yeah.
around as to what you're working on. I appreciate the candidness about the things that you're in the middle of learning and uncovering. And yeah, I mean, I think the questions you pose are questions that everyone experiences, and I think we're all trying to sort through.
Yeah, and if your audience, tends to be more maybe on the production side of the business, like there's only so many big brands in the world you can sell to. That you can sell the $50,000-$100,000 film projects or whatever it is. So like, I think there's opportunity if you can work with smaller up and coming brands or companies like us, but it's got to be done in a way that is like achievable for us. Like, it's a no go. I can't give you 25 grand. I can't write the check. So like, how can we do stuff that we can feel good about, that we can see performs, and it's not a cost per acquisition, I'm not getting to that level, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's, this is the chair that I sit in. I have investors, I've got a team, I'm looking at, P&L, and we have to allocate resources very carefully. And so I think there's a bunch more of us than there are the big boys. The big boys write big checks, and that's sweet. Go get that work if you can get it. But if we can do work together at this stage and grow together, eventually, hopefully, we're a big boy.
Well, I was I was just recording an episode a couple days ago, and it was with the CMO. Her name's Bronwyn. She works at a surf company called
Oh, nice.
Finisterre. And she's like, I have purposefully been moving down the ladder from big company to smaller company over
Yeah.
the course of my career because I can have more impact on change.
Yep.
There's more degrees of variation that I can influence. And so I think the same is true for creatives also, who are looking for people to partner with and work with. Yeah, the tricky thing then is how do you develop a scope of work
Yes.
that works within the budget and
That's
keeps
right.
everyone happy.
Now the pro of working, so we're less sexy to work with because we don't have big budgets. However, we can say yes right away. So it's
True.
like I could just say yes, like, so if you come to me with something that seems feasible, I can say yes. And it's
Yeah.
not like, hey, next quarter we're having our first meeting about the following. It's like, no, we'll just say yes and let's do something. So, there's a pro con to the smaller guys. Um, but we're the next crop of who, some of us are going to be the big boys. And so growing along there.
Yeah. Well, Nic, thanks for the conversation. Thanks for the time. I'm excited to see your podcast get out there and flourish. And where can people go and find you? Where can they? I mean, people know how
Yeah.
to find podcasts these days, but
Yeah.
tell us where
Yeah.
we should find you.
So I haven't personally had social media since 2015 or 16. So I do have LinkedIn. I don't know. I don't really consider it social media. So you can look me up on LinkedIn, Nic De Castro. There's no K in my name. And then on podcast, so we're the LandTrust podcast. LandTrust is one word. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, other platforms. And then LandTrust, you can landtrust.com. And then we have our socials linked on there, but Instagram, I think it's like LandTrust_Hunt or something like that.
Incredible. Well, thanks so much. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, you too, man.
See ya.